All right, here are our solutions for perfect problem 5 for math 65. We're asked to factor this mess of a polynomial. What do we got? 3 variables going on here. And specifically factor it by grouping. So the way you factor by grouping is you kind of pair up your terms. Make this our first group here, and this our second group here. So group 1, I got 2x cubed y squared minus 6xy squared z squared. And I only want to consider these two terms. If you look at all 4 and look for a greatest common factor, I think you will find that the greatest common factor is just 1. They don't have anything all in common. So what you do instead is you just look at pairs of them. Look at the first two. And what is the most that these guys have in common? What's the greatest common factor here? Well, if you look at the coefficients, the greatest common factor between 2 and 6 is just a 2. So from the numbers, I'll be pulling out a 2. What about x's? I got x to the first power here, x to the third power here. So x to the first is the most that I have in common. Y squared here, y squared here. So I got y squared in common. And then there's no z's here, so I don't have any in common. So it looks like this is my greatest common factor from the first two terms. And if I pull that out from the first term here, if you divide 2x cubed y squared by 2xy squared, the 2's will cancel, the y squareds will cancel, and x to the third divided by x to the first is x squared. So all I have left from this first term when I factor out 2xy squared is x squared. What this next term? Well, let's see, from negative 6 I factor out a 2. Negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. X to the first power, x to the first power. I already took out the 1x that was in here, so I don't have any left. Y squared, I took out both of the y's. None of those left. But I still have both of my z's. I have z squared left here. So everything, maybe I should have color coded this better. Everything from the first group is done. I took these two and I pulled out the greatest common factor and I was left with x squared minus 3z squared. What I'm now going to do is take my next group, negative 5x squared z cubed plus 15z to the 5th power. And my goal is to factor out something from both of these terms so that I'll be left with the exact same thing in the parentheses here. So I want to be left with x squared minus 3z. If you look at these terms and you want to be left with x squared minus 3z, well, let's see, if I want 1x squared, I better factor out negative 5 here. Unfortunately, they both have a negative 5 in them, so that'll work. Pull out a negative 5. I want to be left with x squared. I have x squared, so it doesn't look like I'm factoring out any x's. And I want to be left with no z's from my first term, so I better factor out z cubed. What I'm saying is the thing that you'd need to factor out of both of these terms to be left with the same thing in the parentheses looks like it'll be negative 5z cubed. What's nice is we have a nice little check built in. Negative 5x squared z cubed divided by negative 5z cubed. Negative 5 over negative 5 is just 1. X squared, and then z cubed divided by z cubed is just 1. So I'm left with just an x squared, which is good. That's what I wanted to be left with. What if I pull out negative 5z cubed from positive 15z to the 5th? Well, positive 15 divided by negative 5, a positive divided by a negative is a negative. And then 15 divided by 5 is 3. Z to the 5th divided by z to the 3rd, 5 minus 3 is 2. So if I pull out negative 5z cubed from these second two terms from my second group, I'm left with x squared minus 3z. And that's good news because that's the exact same thing I have in the parentheses over here. So what we're now going to do is take this a step further. Look at this like it's two terms. This is one of them and this is the other. And each of those terms has something in common, namely x squared minus 3z squared. Right? They both have that thing in them. So I can factor that thing out in front. I can pull out this and this. Just like I did in this step when I pulled out 2xy squared from both of these terms. Now these are my two terms. One's in green, one's in blue. I'm going to pull out x squared minus 3z squared from both of them. Well, if I pull them out, this isn't there anymore, this isn't there anymore. So all I'm left with is 2xy squared minus 5z cubed. So what I've managed to do is I've taken this polynomial, which was a sum of 4 terms, and I've factored it. I've rewritten it so that it's something times something else. That's called factoring by grouping, and that will be the final answer and the end of this video. I guess not the end of this video, because I want to make one more point. Had you been unsure of your answer, you can always check it. We could multiply. These are just polynomials. We know how to multiply polynomials together. FOIL, or use that box method. Multiply these back together and make sure you get to where you started. Because if this is the same as this better be the same as this. I'm not going to check them because I'm fairly confident in my answer, so I'll just end the video here.